Hey there everyone, this is Ray Carcillo for Classic Game Room, and today we're looking at Red Steel 2 for the Nintendo Wii from Ubisoft. Red Steel 2 is really a sequel in name only. Having nothing to do with the first game, you play now as the last Kusagari, a mysterious prodigal son who has returned to his home of Caldera to exact revenge and bring justice upon those who have hunted down his kind. This is really all you need to know about the game's plot, as the atmosphere seems to tell a lot more than the story itself. Even though supposedly taking place in the future, Red Steel 2 feels more like a cross between a spaghetti western and some steampunk wet dream. You have the shoddy village outpost typical of the ones you'd see in a John Wayne movie, combined with some sick character and weapon designs that clearly show some advancement in technology while still staying simple enough to not really be that futuristic. You especially see this with the guns. The graphics also work well with this style of game, as they're done in a cel-shaded look that reminds you a lot of another Ubisoft game, 13. The cel shading makes it a lot easier for the game's design to stress the theme of East meets West, instead of relying on its plot to get that theme across like in the first game. And considering how bad the first Red Steel looked when trying to go for a more realistic style, cel shading was clearly the way to go for multiple reasons. The sound for Red Steel 2 is also very solid. The over-the-top voice acting is typically a down point for me, but in a game like this it works, and probably would have been disappointing, I think, if it wasn't over the top. The musical score also fits in well with the East meets West theme, where 1 second the music has you feel like a samurai, and the next you're ready for a duel at high noon. So definitely Red Steel 2 did a great job with the overall atmosphere and feel of the game. Unfortunately, a fresh coat of paint can't fix the gaping holes in the walls of this game franchise. One of the first games to require the Wii Motion Plus, which saw the game bundled with it upon release, Red Steel 2 still had some control problems. The Motion Plus was supposed to provide a 1-to-1 ratio between movement and recognition by the Wii, and although does so successfully for most other titles, still had some recognition problems if you swung your sword too quickly in Red Steel 2. This lack of response for a title that was touted as having fixed all the response problems from its predecessor is severely disappointing. Aside from these response problems, Red Steel 2 did make advancements compared to the first game in the series. I was much happier finding out that you could readily switch between your sword and gun instead of waiting for certain one-on-one scenarios where you would have to use your sword for honor purposes. Now, the sword is as much a defensive tool as an offensive tool, and can be used whenever enemies are in range, or can be used to deflect the bullets of far-off enemies before you blast them away with your own gun. This switching between weapons, though, was still too slow for my tastes, and sometimes left you in a bad situation when you've got enemy ninjas leaping all over the screen. Another down point for Red Steel 2 is the replay value. This is a first-person shooter without a multiplayer, which to me is a sin if you're putting out any shooter. And then when you consider how stale and repetitive most of the side missions are in the single-player campaign, and there's just nothing to bring you back to this once you complete the main story. No multiplayer, and very linear gameplay that lacks variety is a bad combination if you're looking for people to come back to a title again and again. When all is said and done, the style and storytelling seen in Red Steel 2 is impressive, and some, but not all of the problems from its predecessor have been remedied. But the Red Steel franchise is still a long way away from becoming something that we can truly classify as classic, and sits now as something that maybe you can just rent if your curiosity gets the better of you. But overall, just reeks of being average and unimpressive.
Give me a name.
Shinjiro! His name is Shinjiro! I didn't do nothing to you, man.
Oh yeah? Then where are my clansmen?
Oh, they're dead! And I'm gonna kill you too, you coward! I'm gonna bleed you dry!